Hello and welcome to this absolute state of a video for all 5 of you who have actually stumbled upon this video wondering who is this creature in my recommended. Hi, I'm Defoe, and on this channel I'll be discussing games and gaming in general. But before all that, allow me to share with you some lore. I was originally going to do my first review about Starfield, but I canned that video for my own mental well-being.
I've forgotten my manners. Phil Hill at your service. Yes, it rhymes. My parents had a thing about rhyming. My siblings are named Bill, Jill, and Sil. The Hills. What a thrill.
Fuck off, Bethesda. But now, onto a game that is actually fun. Lethal Company. Lethal Company is a first-person co-op horror game. It's fun, it's terrifying, and most of the time it's somewhere in between.
Ah, he's right fucking there! Get away! Ah!
And I'm going to gush about it for the next however many minutes. Disclaimer, this is my first ever video, so it's probably going to be complete garbage, so I apologize in advance. But hopefully you'll enjoy it enough anyway. Lethal Company is set during some sort of cosmic apocalypse. You are hired by the company to delve into the long-abandoned facilities situated on a few industrialized moons throughout the galaxy to collect scrap and deliver it back to company headquarters. You're kind of like an Old West prospector, if by like an Old West prospector you mean collecting seemingly mundane household and industrial items instead of, you know, gold, and that your boss is, well, he's different. You might not get the sense from the cartoony style that the game has going on, but Lethal Company is creepy. Really, really creepy. When you're delving through these labyrinth industrial facilities or the halls of an old mansion, there's a sort of liminal space feel to it all. Something just feels kind of off about everything, that there's something hanging above these places. And no, it's not just that they're full of monsters, which we'll get to them in a bit. But it's that, apart from that, there's nothing in them. They're empty. There's no sign of anyone having ever been in them at all, save for some of the scraps and other bits and pieces that have been haphazardly left behind. And it just brings to mind the question, what actually happened here? And so far as I'm aware of the lore, what little I do know of it, the question's not really answered. And honestly, I think that's for the best, because not knowing the answer forces your mind to fill in the gaps. And your noggin has a way of coming up with something far creepier than any answer you could ever be given. It causes this sort of paranoia that when you're walking around, you're afraid to make noise, you're trying to stay low and slow. And then an ambient track kicks in. And now you just want to leave. But you can't leave. You gotta collect more scrap. Another thing I love about the setting is how isolating it all is. When you're cut off from your group or when you're playing by yourself, you are alone. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, no shit, of course you're alone, you're playing by yourself. But with voice chat making up such a large amount of the soundscape in the game, there's constantly chatter going on down a mic. But without it... Hello? You feel vulnerable. One false move and you're dead. It highlights just how alone you actually are. In short, it's great. It sets up the rest of the game perfectly. Which, speaking of the rest of the game, we really probably should be going to talk about it now. Let's address the elephant in the room, the visuals. They're simple and they're low res. For some people this might be a bit of a turn-off. I'll admit it was something I was a bit skeptical about myself, but it turned out to be quite the inspired choice. The low-res look to the game does nothing but enhance the creepy factor, adding to the uncanny atmosphere the game has wonderfully. Lethal Company has a wonderful aesthetic in general, with this sort of 80s used future look, with CRT monitors and simple keyboards mixing with advanced but crude-looking technology like teleporters. It's really cool stuff. The real star of the show, though, is the audio. It's fantastic. From the awesome ambient soundscapes and music, to the kind of incredible locational audio, hearing voices and monster roars echo down a hall is incredible. Hearing creaking pipes or the whisper of a voice when you're alone is just as cool. Okay, I'm going to leave now. Goodbye. But the best part of it all is the voice chat. how it changes your voice depending on where you are, what you're using. If you're underwater, speaking through a radio, have a snare flea attached to your head, it's kind of awesome. It's also the fact that the voice chat only remains active so long as the player is alive. There's nothing as spine-chilling in this game as hearing someone mid-sentence just stop talking because they got nailed by a monster.
Okay.
And speaking of monsters, they can hear you. And not just your footsteps. No, they can hear you. This has allowed them to do some really cool and creative things. Some monsters have an incredible sense of hearing but are completely blind. And as often as voice chat can add to the horror of the game, just as often it adds to how funny Lethal Company is.
What the fuck?
It sets up some of the best moments in this game, and honestly, I would say if for no other reason than the voice chat, this game is worth playing. But with all that having been said, let's go on to the gameplay. The gameplay loop in Lethal Company is simple. You start out on a ship with a group of friends, randomers, or by yourself, and after being fed the whole company spiel, you're let off the hook. You start an orbit of experimentation, an easy moon. Your goal is simple. Land, enter into the moon's facilities, gather what scrap you can find, bring it back to the ship, and then leave. Collect enough scrap over 3 days to make your quota, bring it back to the company, get paid, away you fuck, rinse and repeat. Sounds simple enough, right? It's not. You see, you start with a quota of 130, but every time you meet a quota, the next quota goes up, which means you need more scrap per run to meet it, which means you have to go to more difficult moons. There are 3 types of moons. The easy moons, experimentation, assurance, and vow. Intermediate moons, march and offense. And hard moons, rend, dine, and titan. The hard moons cost money to visit, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Lethal Company's maps are partly procedurally generated, meaning that outside nothing much is going to change. A rock here, a pumpkin there. But inside, the layout and even style can be radically different run to run, with corridors, jumps, dead ends, locked doors, monster vents, fire exits, even entire rooms in completely different places. If I'm making it sound like the game gets a bit difficult, it's because it does. Harder moons have more complex layouts and better loot, but also more monsters, more dangerous monsters, and more hazards. You see, in Lethal Company, nowhere is safe. Everything is acutely capable of ending your life, and it will end your life. From the humble landmine and turret, to the roof-clinging snare flea who'll hug you until you die, blob monsters unlikely to reach you even after the heat death of the universe, spiders so big they'll have arachnophobics foaming at the mouth, lizards which shart tear gas, and hoarder bugs which steal your loot. But don't worry, there are more challenging threats. The Bracken will have your head on a swivel from the moment you first catch him, fucking about in the dark. But he's a sneaky one, hiding around corners and coming in from alternate angles. The Bracken is a little shy though, and will back off if you look at him for even a brief moment. Look at him for too long, or don't keep your eye on your 6, and he'll give you an impromptu chiropractic adjustment, free of charge, before he drags your ass to the Shadow Realm. Another source of nightmare fuel, the Thumper, who are so called because they thump. They can't hear, but they have damn good eyes, and they can move fast. Mach 12 fast. Luckily, the 90-degree angle exists, and they slow down significantly going round corners. There's the Nutcracker, the Ball Buster, the Bust Nutter, who is packing a super shotgun, and he'll plaster you up the nearest wall with it if you so much as move a muscle when he pops that little eye of his out. Nutcracker is unique, however, because if you do manage to kill him with the old World War I special, and I do mean if... you will become the proud owner of a gun. And then there's the masked who'll turn you into zombies. I think there might be a masked... Bang! Bang! That's not fucking good. Coilheads who rock that giraffe neck and only move when you look away. The ghost girl who'll pop your head like a zit. And then there's the jester. But despite everything, you manage to get outside. So you're safe, right? No. There's the worm, circuit bees, and the baboon hawk, but they're the least of your worries. The eyeless dog is another matter. When you first see it, you might think to yourself, man, That's one fucked up looking dog. And proceed to try and get past it as quickly as possible. This is the worst possible thing you could ever do. You see, this puppy may be blind, but he has ears like a bat, and if he so much as thinks he hears those cherry switches of yours, he's turning you into his next chew toy. So, as long as I don't make too much noise, I'll be fine, right? Wrong. Behold, the Forest Keeper, responsible for a good 70% of the most hand-shittingly terrifying moments I've experienced in the game so far. This chunky boy is deaf, but he has eyes like a hawk and can pick out a fly's balls from 1,000 yards away. If he starts stomping his little way over, run and hope for the best that he doesn't catch you. But what if I want to fight them? Well, you can, but you shouldn't. Enemies in Lethal Company do a lot of damage, and you don't do a lot of damage back. And that's only the monsters you can fight. Most of the more dangerous monsters in the game can only be stunned, they cannot be killed. And then there's the fact that combat items take up inventory slots, which could be filled with loot instead. So basically, run. But that's only the monsters. What about the environment itself? Well, yeah, it doesn't like you much either. Setting aside simply getting lost, getting crushed by your own item drop pod, falling to your death in the facilities, or simply running out of time. Oh yeah, you only have from 8 AM to midnight to do all of this, or else you get left behind. And after generally around 3 PM outside, those German bedtime stories I mentioned earlier on start to spawn in. There are 5 possible environmental effects that you can encounter on the moons. Rainy, which spawns quicksand. Stormy, which causes lightning strikes and can strike you if you're holding a metal item. Foggy, which is foggy. Flooded, which causes water levels to steadily rise for the duration of your stay, making navigation a headache. And Eclipse, which causes all outside monsters to spawn in from the start of the day. But against absolutely everything. You survive your 3 days, you get your quota, and you get back to Company HQ. You're out of the woods. No, you have to sell your loot. So ring that little old bell, but don't ring it too many times. For if you do ring it too many times, you'll find out the hard way that your boss is a massive murder tentacle hentai monster who will promptly end the life of whatever unfortunate creature that happened to make the mistake of being anywhere near it at the time. So maybe don't do that. So after, hopefully, surviving your boss and selling off your loot, an equivalent sum to the amount you sold will be available for you to purchase items or passage to hard moons. And it gets expensive. Some of these items for purchase are your standard fare. Torches, walkie-talkies, shovels, but also more crazy stuff too. Flashbangs, stun guns, jetpacks, that sort of thing. You can upgrade your ship too with signal transmitters to send messages to your team and teleporters both to the ship and out of the ship. This is a mistake. Or you could do some interior decorating, I suppose. But 2 of the most valuable items in the entire game are the ones you start the game with, for free. Your suit scanner, which can pick out loot, enemies, and landmarks. And the console, which as well as allowing you to fly the ship, also allows you to open doors and shut off turrets, as well as monitoring your teammates. In most other games, staying on board the ship is a sort of self-imposed exile, where you're going to be bored for the entire time while your friends have all the fun. Not so in Lethal Company. The fact that you have to manually enter all of these commands into the console, while also keeping an eye on all of your teammates, operating the teleporter, and keeping yourself safe, gives the experience quite a bit of depth that you mightn't expect. All the stuff you can buy can make meeting quota easier, but not by much. On your second run, the training wheels are off. In addition to your quota getting increased, now if little Jimmy gets struck by a bolt of fucking lightning, or gets his legs blown off by a landmine, you're gonna get fined. Oh, and did I mention that if you all die, or you all get left behind, you lose all of your loot? I forgot to mention that. With every quota getting progressively more demanding and with all you're already up against, you'll eventually slip up and you'll miss your quota. At which point, the company, having evaluated your performance, will find it sorely lacking and eject you from the airlock.
No! I want to leave! I want to leave!
Forcing you to restart from the very beginning again. This gives playing Lethal Company this slowly building tension, as with each close call you get closer to having to restart the game from the beginning. It forces you to take on some insane risks just to meet quota. It's nerve-wracking, and it's awesome. There is some form of progression from save to save, in the form of earning XP, which will increase your position in the company up to the max rank of boss. This is unfortunately just cosmetic though. Despite the limited progression in Lethal Company, it's still highly replayable. Only after having played the game from the day it released am I thinking of delving into mods and the weekly challenge moons, because There's really nothing else like Lethal Company, and on the point of mods, they include everything from gameplay tweaks to adding completely new monsters to the game. And now, just before we finish off, a verdict. So should you play Lethal Company? If you're one of exactly 5 people on the face of the earth that hasn't actually played it already, and if you have a group to play with, absolutely, it's some of the most fun I've had in a multiplayer game in years. If you're by your lonesome, I'd be a wee bit more cautious in recommending it to you. Don't get me wrong, it's an excellent horror game solo, but with co-op making up such a large amount of the game, you go from an already pretty challenging game at times with people to an extremely difficult game by yourself. One where you're highly unlikely to see everything it has on offer. Not to mention that without the social element, you're missing out on so much of what makes Lethal Company special. But if you do have a group to play with, I'd give it a strong recommend. It's excellent. For anyone that's still watching, thanks for sticking me out. Hopefully you cracked a smile or had a laugh or two. If you did enjoy, consider leaving me a like and subscribing, you know, all that jazz. And in the comments, leave me any pointers as to things I could improve for my next video, and also if there's any games you'd like to see my take on. Except for Starfield, I'd rather die. But with all that said, thank all of you lovely people for watching, and cheerio.